everyone. Welcome back to the Niche Pursuits podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Hawes from nichepursuits.com. And today I've got a great guest with me here today. I've got Deacon Hayes. He's somebody that I've connected with over the past year or so. We met at a conference. It's been almost a year ago, I think, at this point. And he's doing a lot of great things with wellkeptwallet.com and other projects as well. So I wanted to have him here on the podcast. Deacon, welcome to the show.
Hey, Spencer. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Like I said, we connected, I think it was a Traffic and Conversion Summit was the first time we met almost a year ago, and kind of been following along with what you've been doing, and it's good stuff.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, that was an interesting conference. I definitely had some takeaways from it, and it's been exciting to, grow the site over actually the past 8 years, and great to connect with you and kind of share some insights on that.
Yeah, definitely. So before we jump into Well Kept Wallet and how you've grown it, give us an idea of what you were doing before you started it.
Believe it or not, I was selling wood flooring.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for luxury homes. But this was back in like 2008, 2009, right? So there wasn't a lot of people spending 40 to 80 grand on wood floors, which is kind of the market that I was in.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very much cutthroat, 100% commission. So you eat what you kill, that kind of thing. And it was one of those things where it was just grind, I'm calling on, cold calling builders and architects and designers. And so that was kind of where I was right before I started the website.
Okay. Was this down in Arizona? I think you're in Arizona right now, right?
Yeah, it's in Arizona. And fortunately, since we don't have snow or a lot of the kind of seasonal stuff, like it was a pretty easy gig in the sense of like I drive around and have no problems doing it. But it was long days and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to try to make even just an average salary.
Mm-hmm. So how does somebody go from selling wood floors to owning a totally digital business about money, finances, retirement?
Yeah. So at that time, my wife and I got married and we decided, okay, let's combine our finances and figure out where we're at. And so we had 52 grand in debt, and that was outside of mortgage debt. And to us, that was like, hey, man, we're just starting. Yeah. We're in our 20s and we have a negative net worth, like between houses going, upside down and plus the 52 grand. So we're like, okay, we got to figure this out. And so I'm a big fan of learning from other people, so I kind of Googled like personal finance experts, found Dave Ramsey, found another guy named Ron Blue, Howard Dayton. So I just started reading stuff, Robert Kiyosaki, and I started kind of to pick and pull. And I was like, okay, really the thing that made the most sense for us was Dave Ramsey. He's very practical. Let's do the debt snowball. It's paid off in 18 months. So that's what we did. We decided to really just go all at it. And we developed a plan to pay off our debt in 18 months. And we paid it all 52 grand off.
Nice.
And yeah, it was exciting. And so I was like, man, this is so much more fun than selling wood floors, right? Like, how could I do this for a living? How could I help people achieve their financial goals? And I find that much more rewarding. And so that's when I started Well Kept Wallet.
Okay. And now, did you have any experience building websites before, or was this your first crack at it?
I think back in the 90s, there was like those, I think there were Lycos sites or something like where you could basically create your own website and put like, you could do like copy and paste a counter in there or like a calendar. Like, I just messed around with stuff. And then fast forward when MySpace was around, I created a layouts website called Layouts for Life, thinking that, there's a lot of people searching for MySpace layouts and things like that. So I dabbled, but nothing that ever made any money. And it was one of those things where it was like, it would be nice to, make a website that had made money, but I never thought that was a reality really until like the past few years.
Yeah. So you started Well Kept Wallet. And so what was the year that you started Well Kept Wallet?
2010.
2010. Okay. So a little over 8 years ago-ish. And it was a personal finance blog, right? You were kind of maybe writing about your own experiences, what worked well for you to pay off your debt and sharing some of those strategies. Was that kind of the main idea?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So how long before the site started making money? Let's say maybe $1,000 a month. How long did it take you to get to that point?
Yeah, so this is crazy. So there's a couple of instances where that happened and then it went away. And so I like kind of these learning experiences. So in 2013, so 3 years in, I got a local TV station like a Fox 10 to come out to our condo and talk, film us and talk about paying off our debt. And believe it or not, I made like $2,000 in AdSense over the next couple of days. And I was like, this is incredible.
Just from the traffic spike?
Yeah, just from the traffic spike.
Ah, nice.
But here's what I learned with media exposure is it has a very short lifespan. So it had been picked up by all these like Fox affiliates around the United States, and that's why we got so much traffic. But after that was like gone, the AdSense was back down to like a couple bucks a day. You know what I mean? Like, so there wasn't really stable income back then. So it wasn't probably till 2015 where we were probably making about $1,000 a month.
So like 5 years in, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of time. Why were you still selling wood floors or had you moved on to a different career over those 5 years?
Well, so what I ended up doing was I was a financial planner. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go become a CFP and, do this legit route. But then there was all these aspects of it that I still didn't like. Like if I needed to go on vacation, I had to run it by my boss. And I remember one time it was Black Friday. And, my wife and her family, they wanted to go to Disneyland. And we're like, okay, we're going to go during this time. And my boss says, well, you still need to work that day. And I was like, really? On Black Friday? He's like, yeah, the stock market's open. I need you to do trades.
Oh, man.
I'm like, really? So I still felt like a slave. I felt like I didn't control my time. And so, even though I felt like I was a step closer to help people with their finances, I felt very restricted, right? So yeah, I did that for a few years and then realized like, okay, I need to do something else and started focusing more on the blog full time.
Okay. And so it takes you about 5 years to get to $1,000 a month. How long did it take you to get to, and hopefully you're okay if I share this, but 6 figures in a year or $10,000 a month?
Yeah, it was actually really quick. And I think the reason is because of intentionality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, when I was a financial planner, I was like, okay, I got to focus on my career, not my blog. So that's what I was focused on.
Right.
So when I had to focus on the blog more full time, it was like, okay, well, how am I going to push the needle that much further? So it was less than a year to go from like $1,000 a month to 6 figures a year.
Wow. So to clarify, the site, you quit your financial planning job to specifically work on Well Kept Wallet, and the site wasn't making enough to cover your normal salary? Right?
Correct. And I'll add a little bit of a caveat in there.
Okay.
So it's more clear. So I did create an SEO company during that time.
Okay.
So Well Kept Wallet wasn't doing much, and I didn't really know how to monetize it. I mean, it was getting some traffic. So I did create another business to kind of offset, the loss in income, if you will. So it wasn't my sole thing at the time, but it became my sole thing over time.
Okay, that makes sense. So doing some contract work, doing some SEO work that helped you pay the bills, but also gave you a lot more time so you could focus on Well Kept Wallet. That makes sense. Okay, very good. So are you willing to share how well the site is doing now and share whatever you're willing? People love income numbers if you're willing to share that, or traffic numbers, whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, so I set this crazy goal to do $1 million in revenue this year, and we will definitely exceed that. So that's
awesome.
That's a huge deal. But what I also realized is when you do huge numbers, you also have huge expenses, right? So, we're doing Pinterest ads and Facebook ads and hiring people. And so, I always have to clarify, like, that's not profit, right? But it is, it's definitely a good living. We do over, 1 million uniques a month, visitors to the site. And so the goal is to continue to provide like the best quality content. So I hired an editor that, has written for Time Magazine and Bankrate. And, so we're trying to like up the quality game because then we know that Google will rank us more, right? If we have, better written content and good authors and that type of thing. So yeah, it's been a fun journey and continuing just to figure out how can we continue to help more people, when it comes to their finances.
Yeah. Congrats on the successful site. I mean, doing $1 million a year in revenue from one site, that's huge. That's a big accomplishment. So just want to say congrats.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, you've definitely been an inspiration, as well as Pat Flynn and some others that have kind of led the way to say, hey, this is possible. So yeah, I appreciate your encouragement along the way.
Absolutely. So where is most of the traffic coming from? You mentioned a few different sources there. Is it mostly from Google?
Yeah, it's going to be about 70% from Google, and then the rest is going to be from social media for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's really my wheelhouse. And happy to answer any questions about that.
Yeah, I would like to jump into that. So what really has been your main strategy for growth? And, since most of the traffic's coming from Google for SEO.
Yeah, so the main thing is word count, and I think a lot of people don't realize like anybody can write 500 words, anybody can write 1,000 words, but to write a 6,000 word authoritative post on a given subject, like that just takes so much time, energy, effort. I calculate that it costs us about $1,000 to write a piece of content, and so it's like, if you're just going out there thinking like, I'm going to rank number one for a really competitive term, and you're just going to slap some content up there and it's going to rank, it's just not going to work. Right. So really we look at like, what is Google seeing? So we use a tool called the SEO Rambler. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it only works like half the time. I think Spencer knows that.
Yep, unfortunately, I do.
But it tells us a lot of data, like what's the domain authority of the websites, what's the word count, what's the reading ease, what's the page speed. Like, so those four things are kind of the main, factors I look at is reading ease, word count, domain authority, and page speed.
And so are you looking for low competition stuff or how do you judge that? I'm going to assume, but correct me if I'm wrong, that, maybe previously you wouldn't target things as difficult, but as your domain authority has increased, maybe you're targeting more difficult things. How do you gauge what you're able to target in terms of keywords?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So early on, we're targeting, low hanging fruit, long tail keywords that we could rank for. Now we're going after really competitive stuff because we just have the authority and the team to write the quality content. So yeah, just kind of taking an analysis of where you're at and say, hey, if your site's not as established, has a lower domain authority, go for those longer tail keywords that aren't as competitive. But if you have an authoritative site, then, you should be, that's one of the things I didn't realize is how authoritative our site was. That's why we weren't making money, because I was like, I wasn't going after money keywords. I was going after just things like cheap, party food ideas, right? And like, well, I'm not going to make much money with that.
Yeah.
So really kind of shifting focus on like, how are we writing content, right? Because if I'm going to spend $1,000 to make a piece of content, like it needs to make at least $1,000 back. So I have to have kind of a monetization strategy in place before even writing the content.
So I have a ton of questions here, and listeners are probably like shouting, hey, ask this question. So sorry if I don't get to your question here. There's a lot of good stuff. But you said like the main thing, you simply said word count. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say word count. That's what it's all about. Can you, and then of course you follow it up, there's these four things that you're looking at: page speed, domain authority, page authority, those sorts of things. But specifically with word count, are you just make it longer than everybody else? Is that as simple as that?
I mean, that's oversimplifying it, right? But it's a metric that I think a lot of people miss, and I saw a couple years ago, Neil Patel did some random study of the average, ranking position in Google on the first page was 2,400 words, right? Mm-hmm. And I just looked at my content, and at that time, I think it was probably around that 2015, 2016, we were publishing under 1,000 words, and I'm wow. Okay, this is not ranking. And, Neil Patel says that I should write at least 2,400 words. So we started doing 2,000, 3,000 word articles, and they would rank, And so now we're like, oh, maybe there's something to this. So I don't think that the word count is like, because obviously if you have content that's not relevant or you have, bad linking strategies, all that stuff, like the word count's not going to matter. But I think the reality is it's almost like a base metric of saying, okay, if the number one position is 5,000 words, then I need to figure out how to make 5,000 quality words for that subject, right? So outline like, okay, what is this product? What are the benefits? What are the disadvantages? Like, what are testimonials? Like, just kind of flesh out, like, what are all those details that are going to give me that 5,000 words that I need?
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. So how much content are you producing in terms of like how many articles per week or month, whatever metric,
So I got really excited. So we're doing one a day. So we're 30 a month, and then stuff wasn't ranking as much. And I was like, okay, what's happening? So I feel like it was hard to produce that much quality content and long, form content. Mm-hmm. So we scaled back. We do about 4 new pieces a week. So that's 16 a month. And then we republish old articles. So we'll go back through the archives and find stuff that was only 1,000 words and add another 1,000, 2,000 words to it. And, just kind of update it for, 2018.
And are you finding that updating strategy works pretty well?
Oh, yeah, it works incredibly well. I use a tool called SERP Mojo. I'm an Android guy. And so what I'll do is I'll track kind of where we rank in the search engines. And so I'll check that after we do an update. And it's amazing. Like it will go from number 7 to number 3 in Google within a couple of days, So, just going through the archives and updating stuff can really boost your traffic.
Yeah, it really can. And I'll second that. I went back and I updated a bunch of articles on niche pursuits earlier in the year. And some of those went from like getting only 10 or 20 visitors a day to like over 100 a day, right? Which is huge, like a 10-fold increase in some cases, just by going back and updating some of the content. So I second that. People should be doing that. It's an important tactic to be doing on a regular basis. So where's the money coming from? I know you've got display ads and some affiliate stuff, but maybe give us a breakdown.
Yeah, what's interesting is most of it comes from affiliates. The second most would be, an ad network, so display ads. And then the third would be sponsored campaigns. And the one that I love the most is affiliate, because I feel like, the ad networks can be, although they're lucrative and the ads are good, because they're relevant to the user, it's just not a great user experience. So at some point, I'd like to get rid of them, but they're definitely doing really well right now. So we've minimized them, right? So that's the thing is like, I don't have if you look at my site, I don't have one in the header. I don't have one, when you're on your mobile device. I try to like minimize them as much as possible. There's in-content ones that, that those do really well, but the affiliates is where most of the money comes from.
Okay. And give us an idea. What kind of affiliate programs are you promoting?
Yeah. So we help people make money, save money, and pay off debt. So I literally just went into each one of those categories and said, okay, what are brands that will help people make money? So Lyft, Uber, DoorDash, Airbnb, Instacart. Like there's so many of those, even survey companies and things like that.
Okay.
And so we really have a vast, I'd say probably like 20 different companies that, we do really well with in the make money category. Save money, it's like coupon apps like Ibotta and Ebates and those type of things. And then getting out of debt, helping people refinance student loans and credit card debt consolidation, that kind of stuff. So companies like Credible or Upgrade or SoFi. So really that was helpful for me too, was kind of honing in like what are the categories that we want to write about, and then who are the top 10 affiliates in each one of those categories. And that helped me kind of hone in on like what should we be writing about so that we can make money with it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. In terms of other SEO strategies, what about link building? Do you have a big ongoing outreach or link building campaigns, that sort of thing?
Oh, so yeah, this is no. So I don't. So for the longest time, I did no link building anymore. My initial thing was PR. So we built up the authority by sharing our story, with anybody. So I would do radio interviews, TV interviews, podcast interviews, anything to get the kind of word out of like, hey, we want to help people get out of debt, and here's our story, and we have some great resources at our site. That was how we did it. So I'm a big fan. I don't want to say link building is dead, but it's not as relevant if you already have the authority. Mm-hmm. If you don't have the authority, it's like the number one thing you need to do, right? So if you're starting with a domain authority of one, like you need to go out there and hustle and do as many, things as you can, guest posts, interviews, that kind of thing. But yeah, we don't really have much of an active one. But I will say we do have one thing that we're doing, and it's a test. So I don't want people to think this is part of our success, but we have a scholarship for $1,500 that we're giving away. And so we're submitting that to a bunch of colleges and getting EDU links. There's a lot of mixed things about that. Like it's, those links aren't really valuable anymore, that kind of thing. That's about the only active thing that we're doing, but we're doing it more for the scholarship than for the link building.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. People probably are familiar with this sort of scholarship link building strategy. People have kind of been doing that a couple of years. Sounds like you actually are doing it, really for the scholarship. And that's, can go one way or the other in terms of effectiveness. But that is interesting to hear that. And I like the way you put it. If people have a new site that has no authority, really, they do need to focus on link building, right? Because they need to get some authority to be able to rank well in Google. But once you have that authority, you almost don't have to worry about that as much. And that's sort of the same approach I have with Niche Pursuits. One of my sites as well is I've got the authority there. When I publish stuff, it usually ranks pretty quick if I'm targeting the right keyword. I don't have to worry about that. So that is interesting to hear that you're not actively, for the most part, building a lot of links, and you can kind of get to a point where you don't have to worry about that as much.
Yeah, and it's so much better because, I remember writing guest posts takes a lot of time, and, doing interviews and all that stuff. Like you're just blocking out a lot of time to do that stuff. And now I just do it because I enjoy it, right? Like I'm on this podcast because I think what Spencer's doing is awesome, and I'm a huge fan. So, I kind of switch my focus from I'm not doing this stuff for the links anymore. I'm doing it, just to spread the message, help more people, that kind of thing.
Yes, and we appreciate it very much, of course. So what else works well in terms of SEO? Anything else, maybe a deeper, content strategy, or just anything else that you have seen drive some success for your site?
Yeah, I think relevancy is key, right? I think so. I told Spencer this. I bought another site in the same niche and started writing content, and it didn't rank as well. And so I started to see that Google views websites kind of in these silos, if you will. And so really just figuring out like, what does Google recognize this website for? And then writing more content around that will get you results a lot faster. So it's one of those things where it was a learning experience of, okay, I want to rank for these really like lucrative terms for this site, but Google doesn't recognize this site for that. So I can do one of two things. I can spend a lot of time building up the authority around that specific category, or I can write in this other category that Google ranks for and figure out ways to monetize it. So I'm going to do both, but to get the quick wins, I'm really writing more of that content that I know Google will rank.
How do you determine that? So you're basically talking about topical relevancy. How do you determine what your site Google views as topically relevant for?
Well, it's more like what ranks quickly, right? So I'll just give you an idea. So for instance, net worths, right? I kind of struggled with this because I'm like, man, it seems so kind of random, but like celebrity net worths, but people are really interested in those, right? And so this website that I own ranks really well within like a week for those type of posts. But if I want to write content about ways to make money from home, Google does not rank it, and if it does, it's on like page 6, right? And so I just realized like, okay, I can write more of this content and figure out how to monetize it while I'm building up the authority in the other categories. So really it's just how fast does Google rank certain types of posts gives me an indication of what type of site Google views my site as.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And so for people that are just starting out, let's say they've got a brand new site, what would you recommend that they do in terms of, topics that they talk about? Should they, because obviously we look at Well-Kept Wallet, you're talking about a lot of different things now. It covers really a broad spectrum, right? Even though you've condensed it down to, the save money, make money, and what was it, retire early or something like that. Sort of these three main things. Somebody that's brand new, how should they hone in on like that laser focused topic to start with, or should they start with something more broad like you've done?
Yeah, one of the best action items I got was to just find the top 10 affiliates in that niche and then figure out what those categories are from there, right? So I could clearly see like the make money and the paying off debt were the ones that are the most lucrative and that are going to help people, the most, right? Like, so the average person that refinances a student loan with Credible saves $18,000, right? So like that's an easier sell because they know like I'm gonna get a lot of value from signing up for this affiliate, right? And so those type of things really help me hone in on like, okay, figure out those top 10 affiliates if you're new. And the way to do that is look at who's ranking, right? Like I could probably, figure out pretty quickly what affiliate relationship Spencer has by, looking at what he ranks for and then going in those posts and hovering over those links and seeing which ones are affiliate links and which ones aren't.
Yep.
It's the same with our site. You could do the same thing. So go to your competition, or I shouldn't say competitions, just go to who's ranking and see who they have affiliate relationships with. And that's a good place to start.
Yeah, I think that's some great tips. Now, you did mention that you just recently purchased a site. I'd like to talk just a little bit more about that. I mean, the site is generating revenue of, 7 figures a year now, Well-Kept Wallet. Why are you going out and buying additional sites?
Well, the main thing now is, finding other people that are passionate about a given area, right? Like a topic. So I have a couple of friends, one's interested in electronics and one's interested in mental health. It's saying like, hey, I don't really know much about those categories, but I know about building websites. I know about monetizing websites. So saying, help other people. Like I love to help other people succeed. It's like one of my passions. So figuring out how to use those talents and abilities that I have to help others succeed. So that's the main thing. Like, yeah, we're already comfortable making the money we're making. We're not really doing it for the money. We do it more for impact.
That makes sense. And so why buy a site instead of building something from scratch?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I tried it and it's a lot harder. It's funny because you forget the first 6 years. You're right. You're like
Yep.
you feel like an overnight success because, like I said, we went from $1,000 to 100,000 pretty quick. But the reality is, it took 6 years to get to a point where that was even possible. And so, buying a website just kind of takes off a lot of those initial years that it would take to build that authority and the link building that it takes and that kind of thing. So, and the other thing is domain age, right? So if you can buy a site that's been around for 10, 15, 20 years, it's going to rank a lot quicker than a brand new website. So that was just our thought process.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, obviously, I purchased a couple of sites this year for that very reason. You've got that existing authority, and you can really just start focusing on producing the content and following some of the strategies that you mentioned, word count, and what are you topically relevant for, and producing great content there, and you can rank quickly in Google. But there is still a draw for some people to start a site from scratch, right? If they're just starting out, and that's just fine. They just need to hustle a little bit. So, any final tips or strategies? Things that are working well? It doesn't necessarily have to be SEO, but if there's any additional SEO strategies or just anything else that's worked quite well in growing Well-Kept Wallet.
Yeah, so here's a weird one. Creating a pro forma. Like I remember I heard about that in college, and it just sounded so like businessy and like maybe corporate-esque,
Mm-hmm.
But I did that, and I really think that's a huge part of our growth. Because basically, I just put an end goal, right? Like, so say you want to make $1 million in the next 12 months, right? And so you put $1 million at month 12,
right?
And then you work backwards. And so you're like, okay, how much you need to do in month 11? How much you need to do 10? And then you get back to month 1, which is right now. And you say, okay, well, now I know to get there, I need to do $100,000 this month. And how am I going to do that, right? And so you start to pull the levers to make that happen. Where before I was kind of just arbitrarily like, okay, I just want to make more money next month, and you're only going to go so far with that type of strategy versus just saying, hey, I'm going to project out how much am I going to make a year, 2, 5 years from now, work backwards. And every month, except for 2 months, I think we hit our goals. And the reality is I was bummed out for those 2 months, but I'm like, hey, we're still doing good, right? Like it's still going in the direction we want to go. And so I definitely encourage people to do that. I just used a Google spreadsheet and some simple Excel formulas, so it wasn't anything fancy.
I like that. I don't know that I've created an official pro forma. I did that a lot in business school, but now that I'm running my own business, I do still project out goals. But I really love what you're saying about projecting out revenue and then breaking down those goals into monthly bite-sized pieces, giving you something to shoot for. So I think that's great advice. Where can people follow along with you? Is there any other place besides wellkeptwallet.com that you'd like to send people?
Yeah, that's the best place. Or Twitter. My Twitter handle is @Deacon Hayes.
Perfect. Deacon, I appreciate you coming on the Niche Pursuits podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Thanks a lot.